I think we all know the trade war is heating up, and this video is not about that, but rather it's about the impacts that trade war heating up is having on American tourism. And not because people are being banned, but because people are either afraid or angry, and as a result of that, refusing to vacation in the United States. Here's the article that got my attention about it. Trump trade wars could tank foreign tourism in the US, report finds. President Trump's trade policies and aggressive rhetoric threaten to hurt the American tourism sector by discouraging foreign travelers from visiting the US, according to a recent analysis. The White House's escalating war with Canada, China, Mexico, and the European Union, combined with other factors, could weigh heavily on foreign tourism in the US. This year, the report from Tourism Economics found Canada accounts for the sharpest projected decline in travelers to the US, with the firm forecasting a 15% drop in the number of visits from the US's northern neighbor in 2025. And this, I think, is a great example of unintended consequences, where a decision that's made creates a problem that is bigger than the one it actually intended to solve. And in economics, this is called the Cobra effect, or the perverse incentive. And specifically what that means is here. The phrase perverse incentive is often used in economics to describe an incentive structure with undesirable results, particularly when those effect results are unexpected and contrary to the intentions of its designers. The results of perverse incentive scheme are also sometimes called Cobra effects, where people are incentivized to make a problem worse. This name was coined by economist Horst Seibert based on an anecdote taken from the British Raj. The British government, concerned with the number of venomous cobras in Delhi, offered a bounty for every dead cobra. Initially, this strategy was successful. Large numbers of snakes were killed for the reward. Eventually, however, people began to breed cobras for the income. When the government became aware of this, the reward project was scrapped. The cobra breeders then just set their snakes free, leading to an overall increase in the wild cobra population. Now, whether or not you actually agree with tariffs, I think the idea of them is pretty clear. If you make foreign goods expensive because you slap tariffs on them, then the companies importing those foreign goods are then forced to make them in America because it becomes cheaper to manufacture them in the United States. Whether or not that actually works that way is up for debate, but at its core, that is the idea of tariffs. But then you have this unintended consequence of people getting upset and hostile towards the United States, and that damages an unrelated part of the economy, which in this case is the tourism industry. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that tariffs work. Obviously, there's debate for that, but for the sake of this scenario, let's say that they do. But then imagine that the people from the tariffed countries stop visiting the United States to protest these tariffs. Well, the United States might see a gain in manufacturing jobs because companies are forced to manufacture in the United States because it is now cheaper to do so. But then on the contrary, you lose jobs in the tourism sector. So if you have some amount of manufacturing jobs you gain and then some amount of tourism jobs that you lose, well, then your net growth is kind of unchanged. You haven't specifically accomplished anything. You have merely shifted jobs from tourism over to manufacturing. All you've really done is drive prices up, and poor government monetary policy leading to very high inflation is something that's very recent in our minds, and I don't think it's something that any of us want to repeat. Also, this is kind of an unrelated thing, but manufacturing in the United States has been on the decline for decades and decades now, and probably it is not coming back anytime soon, and any politician that says that it is coming back is basically just lying. It is all political hogwash. Clinton, essentially, in 1993, was the only president in recent memory who's been able to bring a significant number of these jobs back. But then, after crashing under Bush, basically nobody has been able to do anything. The needle has moved a little bit under Obama, a little bit under Trump, recovered some under Biden, but by and large, it hasn't moved in the last 5 or 6 years and is still way below the heights that we saw in the 1970s to the 1990s. But back to tourism. Tourism contributes about $2.3 trillion and 18 million jobs to the United States economy. So you can see why losing that would be really bad for the United States. And tariffs very specifically make enemies of individual people who will retaliate against the United States and their tariffs by making decisions with their wallets, and those decisions will include where they want to go on vacation. And probably you know that people are making decisions on what to do with their wallets in retaliation to the United States through headlines like this that I'm sure you've seen. Canadian grocery stores are sidelining US products, and American businesses are feeling the pitch. Canadian businesses, large and small, have been turning down American products, starting with non-essentials such as alcohol and spreading towards a wider variety of food products that economic experts say could hit different levels of the agricultural supply chain. Basically, overnight, everything changed, maybe irreparably, said Alicia somebody, a resident of Quebec, as she recalled the morning after the tariff announcement came for the first time. There's suddenly Made in Canada labels on things, and American booze is gone from the shelves. She said she now sees shoppers, geez, try to say that 5 times fast, actively checking where where everything is made, taking the task of boycotting US goods very seriously. And it does, for all intents and purposes, seem like Canadians are taking this US boycott really seriously. Now, whether or not it will actually last remains to be seen. Maybe they decide they want their bourbon more than they want to boycott US products. We'll have to wait over the coming months to see if that actually goes anywhere. But if they are taking this seriously in the boycotts, then it's not hard to imagine that they'll take it seriously in other aspects of life and business, namely vacation. And in fact, this is something that we are seeing. Canadians pull back on US trips, threatening to widen the United States' $50 billion travel deficit. Canadians are skipping trips to the United States, and visitors from other countries could soon follow, threatening to deepen the United States' $50 billion travel deficit. Experts say they're pulling back for a variety of reasons, ranging from unfavorable currency exchange rate to the US political climate, given President Donald Trump's trade policies and his public statements on annexing Canada, as well as high-profile detainments of people who already had visas to be in the United States, long visa wait times, and other policies that have added to tensions with longtime close allies. Reached for comment Friday, the White House spokesperson said by email that, quote, everyone wants to come to President Trump's America. Canadians will, quote, no longer have to endure the inconveniences of international travel when Canada becomes our 51st state, and that, quote, Europeans are also eager to enjoy the golden age of America if they so choose to do so, the spokesperson said. And these Canada will become the 51st state comments are doing a lot of unnecessary harm to this US-Canadian relationship, with the result being that Canada's population is resenting the United States, and they are demonstrating this resentment with things like pulling back on tourism and boycotting goods. It's the same reason that you don't hear about a lot of Americans going and being a tourist in like Russia or North Korea. It's because we have bad relations there, so we don't want to support those countries. Now, when this topic is brought up, and specifically when I'm looking at it on Reddit, a lot of people say, well, we don't need them. And maybe technically we don't, but that doesn't mean that the relationship isn't mutually beneficial just because we could survive without Canada. I don't technically need my next door neighbor, but that doesn't mean I flip them off and make rude comments every time I see them. The loss of these relationships is having a ripple effect into things like the tourism industry. Also, before we go any farther, if you like this kind of deep dive into news, topics, and so on, if you could consider subscribing. I'm trying to put out a video twice a week, and I'd love to see you around here. For now, Canada is the main country that we're seeing these backlashes from, but it does look like we might start to see similar trends from other countries as well. And this is from, yes, the trade war, but also because of this administration's immigration policy and the way they're choosing to enforce it. The Independent talks more about this. Research by YouGov in March found that Western European attitudes towards the US have become more negative since Trump's re-election last November. More than half the people in Britain, 53%, Germany, 56%, Sweden, 63%, and Denmark, 74%, now have an unfavorable opinion of the US. In 5 of the 7 countries polled, figures for the US favorability are among the lowest since polling began in November of 2016. It's not completely about the trade war, to be clear, but the bad trade relations and immigration policy are together creating an unfavorable outcome in the form of, I don't like America, so I'm not going to go there. And in fact, the outcome is so unfavorable that countries are actually starting to update their travel advisories, including the United States, to mention key things about what people who are going to the US should be wary of and avoid, and they're kind of updated in a way that we've never seen before. The United Kingdom has updated its foreign travel advice for the US on March 15th, recommending visitors comply with US authorities, which set and enforce entry rules strictly, and warning you may be liable to arrest or detention if you break the rules. An archived version of the webpage from February 1st shows the guidance had previously said the authorities in the US could set and enforce entry rules with no mention of arrest or detention. Germany's Federal Foreign Office updated its website Tuesday, advising travelers that even having a valid authorization permit or US visa don't guarantee the right to enter the country, and if refused, there is no legal recourse against this decision. A new paragraph warns criminal records in the United States, false information about the purpose of their stay, or even a slight overstay of their visa upon entry or exit can lead to arrest, detention, and deportation. After Canada and Mexico, the United Kingdom is the largest market for inbound foreign tourists, sending roughly 4 million tourists to the US last year, according to the National Travel and Tourism Office of the Department of Trade. In 2024, 2 million German travelers visited the US per NTTO data. And this is bad. I don't really have to tell you that it's bad because there's a $2.3 trillion industry at stake here. Tourism is built on trust between two countries. Trust that the laws will be followed by the tourist, and also the trust that if something goes wrong with those laws or a visa or a mistake happens, because mistakes happen, then there's a trust that the country country that received the mistake will then be reasonable in trying to resolve the issue. It's a lot of pressure to say, sure, you can come here, but if anything at all goes wrong, then we will arrest you. That's kind of too much pressure to be putting on people coming into the country, especially when they can just as easily go to a different country, have similar experiences, and not be worried about being arrested. We have to find a middle ground between everyone can come here all the time with no rules or vetting, and everyone coming here is suspected of committing a crime or suspected that they're going to commit a crime, and we treat them as such. Because this, again, is $2.3 trillion annually and 18 million jobs we have at stake here.